What is the one thing in this world that is truly, unquestionably yours? Your name. It can be changed. Your face. It ages. But your shadow, it is your constant companion from your first breath to your last. Or so you believe. What if, one day, it decided it had its own business to attend to? What if it started moving with a purpose you never gave it, and its only destination was the cold, silent earth of the graveyard? This is the story of Tariq Jelani, a man who sold his silence for the truth, and whose shadow became the collector of a debt he never knew he owed. Tariq Jelani was an investigator for a small, gritty newspaper in the city of Luxor Plains. Not the flashy crime beat, but the forgotten files, cold cases, bureaucratic cover-ups, the stories everyone else had given up on. His flaw was not greed, but a corrosive, consuming obsession. He needed to know. He needed to unearth the hidden truth, no matter how buried it was. This obsession cost him his marriage, his friends, and left him with only the company of case files and the weak glow of his desk lamp. His white whale was the Luxor Plaza collapse. 5 years ago, a new, shiny office building had pancaked during construction, burying 14 workers. The official report blamed faulty materials. But Tariq had a source, a terrified former site manager named Zainab, who whispered about corners cut, bribes taken, and signatures forged by a powerful, unnamed developer. Zainab was his only thread, but she refused to go on the record. "They will bury us both, Tariq," she'd say, her eyes darting to every window. Some truths are meant to stay in the dark. But Tariq couldn't let it go. In his desperation, he ventured beyond his city archives. He sought out Mansa, an old woman who lived on the outskirts of town, who people said could find what was lost. He didn't believe in her magic, but he was desperate for a direction, a name, anything. Mansa's hut smelled of herbs and damp earth. She listened to his frantic pleas, her eyes milky but seeing everything. "You seek a truth that the earth has swallowed," she said, her voice like dry leaves. "I can give your shadow eyes to see in the dark places where paper truths hide. But listen to me, Tariq Jelani, a shadow that sees for itself may one day walk for itself. And it may remember paths your feet have never walked." Desperate, arrogant, and dismissing her words as superstition, Tariq agreed. The ritual was simple and chilling. She had him stand in the noon sun, and she spoke words in a language that twisted in the air. She poured a mixture of ground nightshade and river silt at his feet, tracing the outline of his shadow's head. For a second, his shadow writhed on the ground, as if in pain, before settling. He felt nothing but a sudden, deep cold, despite the sun. "It is done," Mansa said, turning away. "Your shadow will now be drawn to the hidden thing you seek. Follow where it points. But the moment it moves without your movement, you come back to me. You sever the cord. Or you will become a passenger in your own skin." At first, it was miraculous. Tariq would stand on the street, thinking of the collapse, and his shadow, cast by streetlights or his desk lamp, would stretch, not away from the light, but towards a specific direction. It led him to a discarded ledger in a dumpster behind a shuttered accounting firm. It pointed to a specific file in a vast council archive that had been misfiled. The evidence was building. The hidden name was getting clearer. Kazim Alatunji, a billionaire developer with friends in very high places. Tariq was euphoric. He was going to break the story of his career. He forgot Mansa's warning. Why would he fear his own shadow? The first sign was the lag. He'd stop walking, but his shadow would take half a second longer to settle. Then, he'd see it twitch at the corner of his eye when he was absolutely still. One night, working late, he saw it. He was seated, typing. His shadow, cast on the wall by the harsh fluorescent light, was not seated. It was standing. And it was slowly turning its head to look at him. Tariq froze, his blood turning to ice. He slowly turned to look at the wall. His shadow mimicked the movement, but its posture was different, straighter, older, with a slight tilt to the head that was not his own. He fled the office. The next day, in the bright sun, he felt a gentle, insistent tug. Not a thought, but a physical pull, like a string attached to his sternum. His shadow was leading him. But not to an archive or a dumpster. It led him through the bustling city, into quieter suburbs, and finally, to the iron gates of the Ajanaku Garden Cemetery. His shadow slid through the bars before he could stop it, flowing up the path towards the older section. Tariq, heart hammering, had to follow. He found his shadow stretched long and thin, its hand resting not on a grave, but on a bare patch of earth between two tombs. A place where no one was buried. That night, the nightmares began. Not of the collapse, but of digging. Of his hands clawing at cold, heavy soil, with a frantic, desperate urgency that was not his own. 2 days later, the tug came again. Stronger. His shadow led him back to Ajanaku Gardens, but to a different, older section. It stopped at a weathered, moss-covered headstone. The name was faded, but Tariq could make it out. Funmilayo Ransom. Beloved daughter. 1942 to 1967, his shadow's hand pointed down, directly at the grave. And then, his shadow did the unthinkable. It began to move. Tariq stood, paralyzed, as his own dark outline on the grass detached from his feet. It walked, with a slow, deliberate gait, around to the back of the headstone. It knelt down. And it began to dig. Tariq watched, his mind screaming in denial, as his shadow's hands, dark, two-dimensional silhouettes, scooped imaginary earth from the grass. The sound was the worst part. Not the sound of digging, but the silence in which this atrocity occurred. The bright sun, the chirping birds, the normal world continued, framing this impossible, silent pantomime of desecration. He found his voice, a ragged whisper. Stop. The shadow paused. It turned its flat, featureless head towards him. Though it had no eyes, Tariq felt a gaze older and colder than the grave it knelt upon. Then, it turned back and continued its silent digging. Tariq stumbled backwards, then ran. He didn't stop until he was back at Mansa's hut, bursting through her bead curtain, gasping for air. It's digging. At a grave. A woman named Funmilayo Ransom, he choked out. Mansa, stirring a pot over a small fire, didn't look up. I warned you. You gave your shadow eyes to see hidden truths. But you sought a truth buried by men. Your shadow, now awake, seeks older truths. Truths buried with the dead. It is collecting what was owed to them. Owed? What are you talking about? Make it stop. Tariq demanded, panic making his voice shrill. I cannot, Mansa said, finally looking at him, her expression one of pity and deep fatigue. The cord is woven. Your shadow is harvesting the unspoken testimony of the dead. The grievances they took to the earth. The lies that buried them. It will go to every grave that holds a truth connected to your search. And it will dig until it unearths the root. What root? What is it looking for? The first lie, Mansa said, her voice dropping to a whisper. The secret that started the tree of corruption you are chasing. Your shadow will follow it down to its seed in the cemetery. And when it finds the source grave, it will not just dig, Tariq. It will expect you to finish the job. Tariq left, more terrified than before. He tried to avoid light, staying in dim rooms, but the pull was now internal. A cold ache in his bones that pointed him to the cemetery. And his shadow grew bolder. Under the moon, from the light of a street lamp, he saw it standing by his apartment window, looking out, a sentinel waiting for dawn. The next day, the tug was irresistible. He was a puppet walking on strings of dread. He returned to Ajanaku Gardens. His shadow was already there, waiting at the gates. It led him to a newer section. The headstone was simple, polished granite, Abubakar Suleiman. 1978 to 2021. One of the 14 victims of the plaza collapse. His shadow knelt. It dug. And this time, something changed. As the shadow's hands moved, Tariq's own hands, in the real world, began to ache with a phantom sensation of pressure, of gripping cold soil. He felt a name rise in his mind, not his own thought, but a whisper from the ground, Kazim Alatunji. Followed by a surge of pure, unadulterated anger and betrayal. This was Abubakar's truth. His unspoken testimony. He knew the developer was at fault. The evidence was now psychic, imprinted on Tariq's soul. But the cost was mounting. He felt heavier, as if the soil his shadow displaced was settling in his own lungs. He began to smell damp earth and decay everywhere, a personal miasma that no soap could wash away. The final straw broke at the funeral of Zainab, his terrified source. She was found dead in her home, an apparent gas leak. A tragic accident. Tariq stood at the back of the gathering, a ghost among mourners. As the priest spoke, Tariq looked down in the bright sun. His shadow was not at his feet. He followed its dark trail across the grass. It was standing beside Zainab's fresh grave, its hand resting on the mound of flowers. And it was shaking its head. No. Not an accident. Then it pointed a long, accusing finger directly at a well-dressed man in the front row, quietly dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. Kazim Alatunji. Tariq's blood ran cold. His shadow wasn't just digging up past truths. It was bearing witness to a present, fresh murder. Driven by grief, rage, and the cursed knowledge boiling inside him, Tariq made his move. He published everything. The ledgers, the misfiled reports, the phantom sensations pointing to Alatunji. He ended the article with a chilling line: "The earth itself holds the final proof, and the dead are ready to testify." The story caused an uproar. Alatunji issued furious denials and lawsuits. But the public eye was on him, and on the cemeteries. That night, the pull came with the force of a seizure. Tariq's body convulsed with the need to go to Ajanaku Gardens. He fought it, locking himself in his dark bathroom. But his shadow, cast by the sliver of light under the door, peeled itself off the floor. It slid up the wall, across the ceiling, and hovered above him, a pool of living darkness that dripped silent menace. He had to go. The cemetery at midnight was a sea of moonlight and profound silence. His shadow, now his master, led him past Funmilayo's grave, past Abubakar's. It went deep into the oldest, most forgotten section, where headstones were crumbling to silt. It stopped before a small, unmarked mound, nearly swallowed by weeds and time. His shadow pointed. Then, it lay down on the ground, superimposing itself over the mound. It merged with the forgotten grave. And Tariq understood. This was the root. The first lie. The seed. His shadow would not dig here. It had become the grave itself. It was waiting for him. His hands, without his conscious command, reached down. The phantom ache was now a real, burning urgency. His fingers clawed into the cold, hard earth. He tried to stop, to scream, but his body was no longer his. He was a spectator inside his own frame, forced to watch as his nails tore and bled, digging, digging, digging. He dug for what felt like hours, under the cold moon, until his fingers hit something soft and rotted, not wood, but cloth. A burial shroud. With a final, horrific pull, he unearthed the top of a skull, clumped with dark, fibrous hair and fragments of fabric. A voice that was not a voice, a thought that was not his, erupted from the hole, from his shadow, from the very soil in his mouth. My land. Images flooded Tariq's mind. A woman, this woman, tending this very plot. A rich man's agents claiming a forged deed. Her defiance. A midnight visit. A shallow, unmarked grave. Her land was stolen, her body hidden, and her murder paved the way for the first of all Atunji's property empires decades ago. She was the foundation. The original sin. The truth was now unearthed. In Tariq's mind. And in this horrible, open grave. Exhausted, bleeding, and soul-sick, Tariq collapsed beside the pit. His shadow slid out of the grave and reattached itself to his feet, now feeling heavier than lead, saturated with grave mold. A light flashed. A voice shouted. "You! What are you doing?" It was the night watchman, flashlight blazing. The beam caught Tariq, filthy, kneeling by a desecrated grave, a skull grinning beside him. Tariq looked up, and in his terror, he made a fatal mistake. He pointed a trembling, earth-caked finger not at the watchman, but at his own shadow, screaming, "It was him. It made me do it." To the watchman, he was a madman, a grave robber, raving at his own shadow. The police were called. Tariq Jelani was arrested for the desecration of multiple graves. His published story, now tainted by his apparent insanity and criminal acts, was dismissed as the ravings of a disturbed mind. The lawsuits against Olatunji were dropped. In his cold cell, under the constant fluorescent light, Tariq has no shadow to command him. It is gone. But he can feel it, out there in the world, attached to him but free. He knows, with a certainty that gnaws at his sanity, that his work is not done. His shadow has tasted truth. And there are more graves. More lies that buried the poor and the voiceless to build the fortunes of the powerful. Sometimes, at night, he feels the cold tug in his chest, pointing east, to the public cemetery where Kazim Olatunji's wealthy father is buried. The shadow is learning. It is following the corruption upstream, from victim to perpetrator. And Tariq knows, the day will come when he is released, or when he escapes. And the tug will return. And he will have to dig again. But what do you think? Did Tariq's noble quest for justice justify tapping into a power he did not understand? Or did his obsession blind him to the fact that he was not unearthing truth, but becoming a vessel for a vengeance older and darker than any newspaper headline? The moral is carved in stone and shadow. When you summon a force to uncover hidden sins, be prepared for it to judge your own soul in the process. And remember, some graves are meant to stay closed, because what they bury is not just a body, but a darkness that can cling to the living. Subscribe to Safari of Tales and hit the bell. We are just beginning to scratch the surface of the dark soil. Until next time, mind where you step, and watch what your shadow is doing.